யூடியூப் லைவ் ஒர்க் ஆகுதா பாத்துருங்க, செக் பண்ணிக்கோங்க.
சரிங்க மேடம்.
லைவ் ஒர்க் ஆகுதுல்ல மேடம்?
ஆகுது மேடம், ஆகுது.
ஓகே, நீங்க நான் எதுவும் ஆடியோவும் நான் ஆஃப் பண்ணிடுறேன், என்னோடது மியூட் பண்ணிடுறேன்.
சரி.
நீங்க ஏதாவது ப்ராப்ளம்னா எனக்கு கால் பண்ணுங்க, நான் இங்க உள்ள நான் ரெண்டையுமே நான் மியூட் பண்ணிட்டேன். நீங்க
ஓகே மேம், ஓகே மேம். தேங்க்யூ. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all, the second year B.Ed students who are watching this. This is specially for the B.Ed students who are doing their program under distance mode. Gender, school, society, and inclusive school is one of the core paper for the students of B.Ed under distance education.
ஸ்கிரீன் தெரியுது மேடம்?
தெரியுதா மேம்?
டாக்டர் பிரேமலதா மேம்?
மேடம் கேக்குதா?
கேக்குது கேக்குது. உங்க ஸ்கிரீன் விசிபிளா இருக்கு. ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணுங்க. ஓகே ஓகே மேம்.
ஓகே மேம்.
ஓகே ஓகே.
Gender, school, society, and inclusive school is one of the core paper for the students of B.Ed under distance mode. This covers the unit 1, which is the introduction to gender, gender roles and development. The unit 1, the introduction to gender, gender roles and development, contains introduction, definition of gender, difference between gender and sex, the concept of gender, sexuality and development, gender dynamics and development, basic gender concepts and terminology, social construction of gender, gender roles, types of gender roles and relationship matrix, gender-based division and valuation of work, exploring attitudes towards gender. Introduction. Gender is a social construct that impacts attitudes, roles, responsibility, and behavior patterns of boys and girls, men and women in all society. Increasing attention has been given to the importance of achieving gender equality in education. Behaviors and beliefs formed in schools and educational institutions can have a lasting impact on gender relations in society. Education systems are both a result of external forces and instrumental to perpetuating or alleviating gender disparity around the world. This unit will discuss basic gender concepts with the help of examples and case studies. It aims at explaining the social construction of gender and how all the forms of gender discrimination start from this notion of social construction. The unit will introduce some of the significant concepts of gender, including gender sex difference, gender dynamics, gender needs, gender analysis, and the notion of equity and equality debates. All these concepts are interrelated and intersect with other sectors of society, including class, caste, community, education, economics, politics, and so on. Therefore, an understanding of these basic concepts will enable the learners not only to understand some of the gender discriminatory practices, but also enable them to take gender positive action towards creating a gender inclusive society. Meaning of gender. The modern English word gender comes from the Middle English gender, an Anglo-Norman and Middle French genre. This, in turn, came from the Latin word genus. Both these mean kind, type, or sort. The word gender has acquired the new and useful connotation of cultural or attitudinal characteristics distinctive to the sexes. That is to say, gender is to sex as feminine is to female, masculine is to male. In gender studies, the term gender refers to proposed social and cultural constructions of masculinities and feminities. In this context, gender explicitly excludes reference to biological differences to focus on cultural differences. This emerged from a number of different areas. In sociology, during the 1950s, from the theory of psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, and in the work of French psychoanalysts like Julia, Lucy, and American feminists such as Judith Butler. Those who followed Butler came to regard gender role as a practice sometimes referred to as performative. What is gender? The simple answer is that gender refers to the different ways in which sexual differences between people appear differently in different times and places, societies, cultures, and across people's lifetime. Gender refers to both gendering processes in society and outcome of those processes. Gender is an important consideration in development. It is a way of looking at how social norms and power structures impact on the lives and the opportunities available to different groups of men and women. Globally, more women than men live in poverty. The World Health Organization, who define gender as gender, refers to the socially constructed characteristics of women and men, such as norms, roles, and relationship of and between groups of women and men. It varies from society to society and can be changed. Gender symbols intertwined. The red, which is on the left side of the figure, is a female Venus symbol. The blue, which is on the right side of the figure, represents the male Mars symbol. In a nutshell, the word gender comes from the Latin word genus, which means kind or race. Gender is a psychological and cultural term referring to one's subjective feeling of maleness and femaleness. Gender may also refer to society's evaluation of behavior as masculine or feminine. The social and cultural definition of men and women are called gender. For example,
It is a society that make rule that a girl will stay in the house while a boy can go out, or that a girl be given less food to eat and less time to play than a boy. A boy should be sent to a better school so that when he grows up, he can look after the family or get a good job, while not much attention is paid to girls' education. Due to these social definition, the differences between boys and girls create two different worlds. What is sex? It refers to the genetic and physiological characteristics that indicate whether one is male or female. The word sex comes from the Latin word sexus, which is determined by a person's reproductive organs. It is a biological term. People are termed either male or female depending on their sex organs, that is, reproductive organs and genes. It refers to the genetic and physiological characteristics that indicate whether one is male or female. Sex refers to the biological difference between males and females. It relates to the observable differences between their genitals and to their psychological function in procreation. There are two sexes, male and female. To determine the sex, one must assay the following physical condition: chromosome, external genitalia, internal genitalia, hormonal states, and secondary sex characteristics. Difference between sex and gender. Gender and sex are two terms often used interchangeably. However, both these terms have different meanings. Robert Stoller in 1960 suggested that the term sex should be used to refer the physical differences between man and woman. Gender comes from the Latin word genus, meaning type or sort. Gender refers to a set of culturally specific characteristics defining social behavior of men and women and the relationship between them. Gender tells us how we expect men and women to behave. It is about how power is used and shared. Terms such as female sex or male sex refers to the biological aspect. Sex refers to the physical attribute such as presence of specific external sex organs, internal organs, and definite sex chromosome. On the basis of these attributes, we can say this is a male child or this is a female child. Gender, on the other hand, is quite different. According to Brownie, gender refers to the culturally and socially constructed differences between male sex and female sex. It refers to the way in which society encourages and teaches the two sexes to behave in different ways through socialization. The above discussion is summarized as follows. Sex refers to the biological difference between male and female. Sex is something that is determined at birth. The individual's external and internal organs, gonads, and chromosomes determine the person's sex. Sex of an individual is determined by nature. Gender refers to the socially and culturally constructed differences between the male and female. Gender is a learned behavior or an acquired identity. Gender is defined by the personality traits, attitudes, behaviors, values that society ascribes to male and female. Gender differences are due to nurture. So, this is a major difference between the sex and gender. You can make a clue of those things. Sex is biological difference, gender socially and culturally difference. Sex is determined by nature, gender is determined by nurture. Sex is determined by the individual's external and internal organs, but gender is determined by the personality traits. So remember these differences for gender and sex. Characteristics of gender. There are many characteristics for gender, out of which gender is socially constructed. Gender is defined by the beliefs and the norms of the society. Society and the values prevalent in that society construct gender roles and relationships. Each society or culture has its own understanding of what constitutes behavior suited to male and behavior suited to female. This may change over time due to influence of education or confluence of other culture. Gender thus become a dynamic concept. The next one is gender involves an array of rights, responsibilities, roles, and relationships. The right of an individual, the role she or he has to perform, the responsibilities to be undertaken, and the inter-individual relationships to be maintained are all shaped by gender. For example, the role of the male as that of the breadwinner and that of the female as nurturer of children are both gender based roles. Domestic responsibilities are generally based on the gender. In most societies, males have a right over the property. The hierarchy in a relationship is also influenced by gender. The next characteristics is gender involves learned behavior or an acquired identity. The process of socialization introduces a person to his or her gender roles. Social surroundings impose expectations over a person, and the person accordingly accepts the gender roles. For example, in India, we often impose boys that they have to protect their sisters. Rarely do we insist upon the reverse. From a young age, girls are told that they need to take care of their homes and hence should learn cooking. But in case of the boys, we may not insist that they should learn to cook. All these inputs get firmly entrenched in the thinking of the child, and thus gender roles get reinforced through socialization. Next characteristics gender includes personality traits, attitudes, behaviors, values that a society ascribes to the two sexes on differential basis. Gender often shapes the personality and behavior traits of a person. For example, when a girl displays emotions by crying, it is quite easily accepted. If a boy cries, he is often told, behave like a man. Even the kind of the games children play seems to be influenced by the gender. Playing with the dolls is considered as a girl's game, and if a boy shows interest in such games, he may be ridiculed. The color pink is associated with the girls and blue is associated with the boys. Thus, traits expected from males and females attitudes, and behaviors, they must display all gender expectation from the society. The next characteristics is power relationship are driven by gender. Power relationship are influenced by gender. Many still believe that it is necessary that male should be the decision maker in the family. Some think that it is better if the male earn more than the female. If a man proposes to a woman, it is considered normal. But if a woman makes the first move and expresses her emotions first, she may be considered too dominating. Even today, some people cannot accept a female in a leadership position. There have been instances of people refusing to fly in airplanes where a woman is the pilot. Society has imposed all these beliefs regarding where the power should tilt. In this respect, India has presented an inspiration to the world by having a prime minister lead the nation 50 years ago. Many other significant positions in India, including the office of the president, have been occupied by women. Gender is relational and refers not simply to women or men, but also to the relationship between them. The next characteristic is access to resources is determined by one's gender. Norms and rules set in accordance with the ideology of gender determine a person access to resources. Generally, male have greater access to and claim over resources as food, health, and education. For example, it is quite common that the male eat first, and often the better share of the food is allotted to the male. The other characteristics are gender roles and norms can change over time. For example, in olden times, in some cultures, decision making was a right of the male. The same culture now accepts women as decision maker. Thus, the role and the expectations ascribed to gender are dynamic and change over time. All these roles are enforced by the society and not by the nature. The last characteristics of gender is gender role vary across culture. Culture play the vital role in determining gender roles. For example, in certain communities, purchasing food items like vegetables is done by men. Some other cultures will consider this as a role of the women. Women are not allowed to work whatever be the circumstances. Performing certain religious rituals is done only by male in some communities. So these are some of the characteristics of gender. Concept of sexuality. Sexuality is distinct from gender yet intimately linked to it. It is a social construction of a biological drive. An individual's sexuality is defined by who one has sex with, in what ways, why, under what circumstances, and with what outcomes. It is more than sexual behavior. It is a multidimensional and dynamic concept. Gender and sexuality. Gender. The term gender, which can be understood as a way an individual expresses and understands themselves in relation to their sex, is often used interchangeably with the term sex. Some common gender definitions include trans, transgender, transsexual, and intersex. Trans. Trans is a broad term often used to refer to either transsexual or transgender. Generally speaking, trans refers to when a person identifies with the opposite gender. Transsexual. Transsexual individuals identify as the opposite gender to their biological sex. Physical transformation, that is, example, genital reassignment surgery or hormone therapy, may be undertaken to change the sex. Transgender. This is a broad term that, like trans, covers a range of identities and or behaviors. Transgender is often used to describe non-traditional gender behaviors or identities. Intersex. Intersex refers to the range of conditions where a person's sex is not strictly male or female. This may be due to the presence of male and female sex characteristics or the underdevelopment of primary sex characteristics. For many, this will apparent at birth, but there are some intersex conditions that not apparent until puberty. When an individual is trying to conceive or that may never be diagnosed. Sexuality. Sexuality can be complicated and is not fixed for everyone. There are many kinds of sexualities that people identify as having, and it is now accepted that same sex attraction is a normal part of human sexuality. Some of the common terminology associated with the sexuality includes heterosexual or straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, asexual. Heterosexual or straight. This refers to when people tend to be attracted by the opposite sex or gender. Heterosexual, attracted by the opposite sex or gender. Gay refers to the same sex attraction and is most often used to in reference to men. Lesbian refers to the women who are mostly attracted to other women or people identifying as women. Bisexual refers to the individuals who are attracted to both sexes and genders. Pansexual or pan is also often to indicate a diverse sexuality and attraction to people regardless of their gender. Asexual. Asexual refers to individuals who do not or have not yet experienced sexual attraction to anyone. Thus, the common terminology associated with the sexuality includes heterosexual, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and asexual. Heterosexual, attracted toward opposite sex, gay, same sex attraction, lesbian, women attracted to other women, bisexual, attracted to both sexual, asexual, experience no sexual attraction to anyone. The next one is concept of development. There are four main gender narratives can be identified in the development discourse. The women in the development approach, the gender in the developmental approach, post-structuralism theory, and the human rights based approach. It must be noted that the elements of all narratives coexist and each narrative build on the next rather than replacing it. Women in the development approach. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, the women in development approach became very popular in the developmental field as a result of the concern that women were being left out of economic development process. The approach focused on the inclusion of the women in the development as a tool to increase the economic and social efficiency of development processes. The women in development approach is prominently featured in the concept of gender parity, the notion that an equal proportion of girls and boys should be enrolled in and complete schooling. The second one is gender in development approach, GAD. By the late 1980s, the gender in development approach came to the forefront. This approach focused on empowerment or increasing the agency of women and giving them the power to take control of their own lives, often through targeted trainings and workshops. This approach also emphasizes gender equity as an objective, which refers to the process of being fair to women and men and challenging policies that unfairly bias men or women. The next gender narrative is post structuralism and development. These theories are concerned with questions of identity and view gender as a malleable form of identification rather than a fixed definition present in conventional development discourse. The next one is human rights based approach. It is based on the belief that education is a universal, inalienable human right that is interdependent with other basic human rights. This approach aims to ensure that all traditionally marginalized groups, including but not limited to girls and women, indigenous people, persons with disabilities, and linguistic or cultural minorities, have access to education. Thus, there are four main gender narratives, such as women in development, gender in development approach, post structuralism theory, human rights based approach. Dynamics and development. Gender dynamics include the relationship and interaction between and among boys, girls, women, and men. Gender dynamics are informed by socio-cultural ideas about the gender and the power relationship that define them. Gender dynamics is nothing but the way in which men and women are treated or behave differently in society, either with their own gender or with each other. The changes in that gender dynamics and the roles in the society for an individual or group can be changed by either economic standing, age, or other factors. Gender dynamics can impact on the ability of learners to access and fully participate in quality education. Barriers to learning will often be different for male and female learners who face different risks and have different needs. Sometimes the gender dynamics are clearly visible, but at other times they might be less obvious or even hidden. Gender dynamics Gender dynamics explains the power difference that exists between women and men. Let us take the example of the family in which father, husband, or brother is the head of the household. Majority of the decisions with regard to finance, allocation, and distribution of resources rest with the man in the household. Women in the family, on the other hand, belong to the subordinated class position in which they are responsible for carrying out the task but not necessarily take part in the decision making process. The next one is gender dynamics helps us to understand the gender relations within the family and outside the family. Let us take a simple example of sexual division of labor. This concept explains that there is a visible difference between women and men in taking up responsibilities related to running of the family. This concept originated during industrialization, in which men were primarily responsible for managing financial matters related to family and working outside the home for earning wages. Women were responsible for managing the housework such as laundry, cleaning, shopping, cooking, and caregiving to the children and the elders. Women have been doing this caregiving and domestic work without any wages, and this domestic labor is unpaid, invisible, and unrecognized within the family or even outside the family. This is an example of gender division of labor that explains the power dynamics that is present between women and men in the family. Gender dynamics can also explained with the help of the concept of gender relation. Gender relations mean social relations between women and men that are primarily originated from the biologically different sexes. Gender relations can be relation of cooperation, conflict, mutual support, competition, difference, and inequality. It helps us to understand how power is distributed between women and men in society. Gender dynamics or relations is present in every sector, including education, law, policies, science, and health. The next one is gender concepts and terminology. Gender refers to the roles and responsibilities of men and women that are created in our families, our societies, and our culture. The concept of gender also includes the expectations held about the characteristics, aptitudes, and likely behaviors of both women and men, that is, femininity and masculinity. The concept of gender is vital because, applied to social analysis, it reveals how women's subordination is socially constructed. As such, the subordination can be changed or ended. It is not biologically predetermined, nor it is prefixed forever. Related terminology and concepts include gender roles, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitivity, gender analysis, gender mainstreaming, and gender parity. What is gender role? The particular economic, political, and social roles and responsibilities that are considered appropriate for men and women in a culture. Gender equality, the absence of discrimination on the basis of a person's sex in authority, opportunities, allocation of resources, and access to service. Gender equity, the process of being fair to women and men. Sometimes this involves measures to redress historical disadvantages that have prevented men and women from having equal access to rights and privileges. Equity leads to equality. Gender equity also implies that health needs, which are specific to each gender, receive appropriate resources. Gender awareness, understanding that there are socially determined differences between men and women and that these influence access to and control of resources. Gender sensitivity, the ability to perceive existing gender difference and issues and to incorporate these into strategies and actions. Contrast with gender blindness. Gender analysis identifies the inequalities that arise from the different roles of men and women, and analyzes the consequences of these inequalities for their lives, health, and well being. Gender mainstreaming, the process used to ensure that women and men concerns and experiences are integral to the design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of all legislation, policies, and programs. Gender parity, a numerical concept concerned with the relative equality in terms of number and proportion of women, men, girl, and boy. In education, this means that the same number of boys and girls receive educational services at different level and in diverse form. Social construction of gender. Society and culture create gender roles, and these roles are prescribed as ideal or appropriate behavior for a person of that specific gender. The idea that gender difference is socially constructed is a view present in many philosophical and sociological theories about gender. Here are the conditions under which gender is viewed socially and individually. Gender-based harassment, adolescent view of adulthood, depression, body image, and education. Gender roles. The term gender role was first coined by John Money in 1955. The term gender role refers to the society concept of how men and women are expected to act and how they should behave. These roles are based on the norms or standards created by the society. Types of gender role. There are some main types of gender role, such as reproductive role, productive role, community managing role, community politics role, and multiple roles. Reproductive role. Childbearing, rearing responsibilities, and domestic tasks done by the women required to guarantee the maintenance and reproduction of the labor force. It includes not only biological reproduction but also the care and the maintenance of the workforce and the future workforce. The second one is productive role. Work done by both men and women for pay in cash or kind. It includes both market production with an exchange value and home production with the actual use value, and also potential exchange value for women in agricultural production. The next one is community managing role. Activities undertaken primarily by women at the community level as an extension of their reproductive role to ensure the provision and maintenance of scarce resources of collective consumption such as water, healthcare, and education. This is voluntary, unpaid work taken in free time. Next one is community politics role. Activities undertaken primarily by men at the community level, organizing at the formal political level, often within the framework of national politics. This is usually paid work either directly or indirectly through status or power. So, community managing role is the activity taken by the women and it is an voluntary unpaid work. But the community politics role is the activity undertaken by the men at the community level. This is usually paid work, directly or indirectly. The next one is multiple roles. There are multiple roles for men and women separately. For men, typically play their roles sequentially, focusing on a single productive role. Women must usually play their roles simultaneously, balancing the demand of each within their limited time constraints. What is gender analysis? Gender analysis refers to the variety of methods used to understand the relationship between men and women, their access to the resources, their activities, and the constraints they face relative to each other. Gender analysis provides information that recognizes that gender and its relationship within the race, ethnicity, culture, class, age, disability, or other status is important in understanding the different patterns of involvement, behavior, and activities that women and men have in economic, social, and legal structures. Gender analysis is an essential element of socio-economic analysis. A comprehensive socio-economic analysis would take into account gender relations, as gender is a factor in all social and economic relations. Analysis of gender provides information on a different condition that women and men face and the different effect that policies and programs may have on them because of their situations. Such information can inform and improve policies and programs and is essential in ensuring that the different needs of both women and men are met. At the local level, gender analysis makes visible the varied roles women, men, girls, and boys play in the family, in the community, and in economic, legal, and political structures. A gender perspective focuses on the reasons for the current division of responsibilities and benefit and their effect on the distribution of rewards and incentives. Elements of gender analysis. For a good gender analysis, resources and commitment to implement the result of the analysis are necessary. Consider these three important points. Gender analysis requires skilled professionals with adequate resources. It benefits from the use of local expertise. The findings must be used to actually shape the design of the policies, programs, and projects. Definition and purpose of gender analysis. Definition of gender analysis. The European Commission defines gender analysis as the study of difference in the conditions, needs, participation rates, access to resources and development, control of assets, decision making powers, etc., between women and men in their assigned gender roles. The purpose of gender analysis is to identify and gender inequalities by acknowledging the differences between and among women and men based on the unequal distribution of the resources, opportunities, constraints, and power, ensuring that the different needs of the women and men are clearly identified and addressed at all stages of the policy cycle. Recognizing that policies, programs, and projects can have different effects on women and men. Seeking and articulating the viewpoints of women and men and making their contribution a critical part of developing policies, programs, and projects. Promoting women's participation and engagement in community, political, and economic life. Promoting better informed, gender responsive, and effective intervention. Why gender analysis is important? Gender analysis provides information on the different roles of women and men at different level in policies, programs, and projects, their respective access to and control over resources, and the material and non-material benefits of the society. and their gender specific needs, priorities, and responsibilities. A thorough gender analysis enables policymakers to understand gender inequalities in a given situation or the sector, as it not only describes the current state of contextual situations by the gender, but also explores the cause and effect of the gender disparities on the target group. Looking at the underlying cause of the gender inequalities and the discrimination can assist in setting relevant and targeted objectives and measures to eliminate gender inequalities. In this way, gender analysis contributes to the improved gender responsiveness of policies and legislation, as it provides the basis for ensuring that the needs of all citizens, women and men, are adequately addressed. The next one is gender roles and relationship matrix. It is very important thing. The gender relationship matrix is an analytical tool that uses participatory methodology to facilitate the definition and the analysis of gender issues by the communities that are affected by them. The main aim of the gender relationship matrix is help determine the differing impact of the development interventions on women and men, provides a community-based technique for identification and analysis, initiate a process of analysis that identifies and challenges gender roles within the community in a constructive manner. Gender analysis is a type of socio-economic analysis that covers how gender relationships affect a developmental problem. Principles of gender analysis matrix. The gender analysis matrix or the gender relationship matrix is based on the following principles. All the requested knowledge for the gender analysis exists among the people whose lives are the subject of the analysis. Gender analysis does not require the technical expertise of those outside the community being analyzed, except as facilitators. Gender analysis cannot be transformative unless the analysis is done by the people being analyzed. Gender relationship matrix has two main parts. One is level of analysis, and the second one is category of analysis. What is that level of analysis? It includes women, men, household, community. Women of all ages in the community, men of all ages in the community, household include all men, women, children residing together, extended nuclear family. Community includes everyone in the project area as a whole. The second type is categories of analysis: labor, time, resource, and culture. Labor. This refers to the changes in the task, level of skill required, and the labor capacity, how much they can do. Do people need to be hired, or can members of the household do it? Time. This refers to the changes in the amount of time, 3 hours, 4 days, and so on. It takes to carry out the task associated with the project or activity. Resources. This refers to the changes in the access to the capital, that is income, land, credit, as a consequence of the project and the extent of the control over the changes in resources for each level of analysis. Culture. Cultural factors refers to the changes in the social aspects of the participants' lives as a result of the project. Gender-based division and valuation of work. Families provide love and support to adults and children, but homes are also workplaces and household are also important parts of the larger economy. Every home is a combination of hotel, restaurant, laundry, and often child care and entertainment center. Women perform most of this family labor, even though men do the same sort of things outside the home for pay as chef, waiter, or janitors. Although people tend to think of domestic activities as naturally being women's work, there is enormous variation in who does what both inside and outside the home. Every society has restriction on what kind of work men and women do, but there is no global content to these roles, and study shows that division of labor are influenced by specific environmental and social conditions. Thus, although gender is often used to divide labor, there is no universal set of tasks that can be defined as women work or men work. Exploring the attitudes towards gender. Attitude towards gender, also referred to as sex role attitude, have been defined as an individual's beliefs that appropriate behavior for men and women. Gender role attitudes indicate the degree to which a person accepts or rejects socially accepted and culturally based norms that dictate appropriate behavior that is gender specific. Gender role attitude. Example of gender role attitude include father and mother should participate equally in nurturing and caring for their children. Men are primarily responsible for earning money and providing for their family. Women should adapt their husband's surname upon marriage. Conclusion. Human rights are for all human beings, men as well as women. Even though there have been some improvements, unfortunately, this kind of discrimination still exists in our society. Gender role attitudes and ideas about rights or tasks that are specific or inherent and to a particular gender encourage us to stereotype or pigeonhole individuals according to their gender. However, gender biases in language, tradition, and the workplace have tended to historically favor men and produce undesirable consequences for women. Thank you. So the above detail contains introduction, definition of gender, difference between gender and sex, the concept of gender, sexuality and development, gender dynamics and development, basic gender concepts and terminology, social construction of gender, types of gender roles and relationship matrix, and exploring attitudes towards gender. I think we have seen the first unit for your reference. Thank you, students. Thank you. Thank you, dear participants. Thank you.